Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, November 21st, 2024. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Chris Colby, author of the Homebrew Recipe Bible, Methods of Modern Homebrewing, and How to Brew Hard Seltzer, joins me to formulate the recipe for a nicely hoppy, strong Belgian Golden Ale. Not a Belgian IPA, but something bright and a little fruity to have on tap through the end of the year. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. It's now November. We're well into it, and Patreon says Apple is taking a big chunk of new Patreon subscriptions initiated in the iPhone Patreon app. It doesn't affect current subscribers, so if you're thinking about subscribing to podcasts like ours on Patreon and have an iPhone Patreon app, go instead to the Patreon website to subscribe for the first time, and then you can use the iPhone to look at wonderful stuff that you'll have access to. And if you go to start a new subscription through the iPhone app, now it'll be more expensive to subscribe to this podcast than going through the Patreon website to make up for the Apple profit taking. Okay. I wish I could just say, see the note number 7 about the Apple stuff, and we could just go on with that. Financial subscribers have already seen an early release of the video episode I'm planning to post on Friday. It's the one where Steve Wilkes and I sample the second version of my honey IPA. It's still holding up. I bottled it at the end of September, and the hops still taste pretty fresh. Supporters also got the recipe for that beer and a link to the behind-the-scenes video that I shot while brewing the beer. And thanks to listener KC, who emailed me to let me know that I forgot to put the link to the bonus video the first time I made the post on Patreon. So sorry, everybody, for the extra notification. Didn't mean for that extra email to go out. It's time to start gathering disaster stories for the annual disaster show. I looked in the email app, and I've only got one story so far, so I'm trying not to panic. Listener Matthew sent a story in way back in February. I don't know when Steve and I are going to get together to record, but it's going to be in the next couple or 3 weeks. So please email your stories of brewing gone wrong to james@basicbrewing.com before you forget. Planning on taking the week of Thanksgiving off next week. Hope everybody has a great time with family and friends. If you're in the U.S. and celebrating that, I'm going to get to meet my brand new great-grandniece for the first time. For those of you cued into the ancestry stuff, that means my niece is a grandmother and my sister is a great-grandmother. And I'm feeling old. Older. I already feel old. I already have the yeast in hand for the beer that Chris and I are going to formulate this episode. It's the winter seasonal from our friends and sponsors, Imperial Yeast. It's B45 Gnome. Casey at Imperial sent me 2 packets. Thanks, Casey. I'm going to share one with Steve. I think he wants to brew a Saison he's talking about. I've been cursed by the shipping gods, so the yeast arrived 4 days later than expected, but luckily it's not the middle of summer. I did dust off my stir plate to make a 1-liter starter to make sure that the gnome was alive and well, and within just a few hours, the starter had reached terminal gravity, so everything's looking good. Usually I don't make a starter for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. Those 200 billion cells in each packet of Imperial yeast get the job done reliably, and my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. You'll hear Chris and me talk more about Gnome in detail in the interview. Gnome offers remarkable clarity, classic Belgian flavor profiles, high flocculation, and versatility for Belgian styles from light and hoppy to dark and malty. Sounds perfect for my hoppy, strong Belgian Golden. Ask your local homebrew store about B45 Gnome and check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. This was a fun recipe to put together. Not too challenging. I have a feeling that it's going to be a very drinkable and delicious beer. Chris Colby, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey James, thanks for having me on the show.
What do you say we brew up a beer recipe?
Sounds good.
Just coincidentally, we just happen to be on the line and talking about a beer recipe. Imperial's got this B45 Gnome that's out as the seasonal, and I've got a couple of packets coming from Casey up at Imperial, and I'm just thirsty for something, kind of biggish and goldenish and Belgianish. I brewed this giant dark beer last time, and I'm gonna switch back on the color spectrum back to something lighter. Have you got some ideas? What do you think about a big Belgian Golden Ale?
I'd like to keep drinking that big dark beer. That's good stuff.
Well, thank you, sir. I've got more bottles up here.
Yeah.
I sent you two.
I know, and somehow they're gone.
Well, that's good. I'm trying to stay away from it. I'm trying to look after the calories a little more these days in preparation for the holiday season. But also in preparation for the holiday season, I need something with a little higher alcohol to deal with the stress of all that.
And if you're looking for something that's strong and Belgian and golden, I have an idea.
Yeah, what style would that be?
Strong Belgian Golden. That's literally a style.
I know. Are there? Do you have any examples in mind that you can think of?
Duvel is probably the classic example.
Mm-hmm.
Also, La Chouffe makes a blonde, 8% blonde beer. That's another example of it, and also potentially is the yeast that we're going to use. So yeah, but Duvel's the classic, and then there's in Belgium there's other beers that are sort of named like devil names or whatever, and they're strong and they're golden and so there's a lot of examples out there.
On the other end of the naming spectrum, there's Avery Salvation, which I haven't had in a long time because they stopped distributing here, but that was also a delicious beer. But I want to put a little twist on it. I made these two with the help of Matt Giovanisi of Brew Cabin and Josh Secor of Gambit Brewing Company. We formulated these really nice hoppy honey IPAs, and so they're really delicious and tasty. So I have on tap. I have my starter Pilsner, which you also had as well. Mm-hmm. But it's not very hoppy. It's kind of it's a good just beer to drink.
Right. It's balanced.
Yeah.
And it was a yeast starter. So.
But I kind of want something a little more fun. So I'm thinking of like putting at the end of the boil or in hop stand or dry hopping, something kind of fruity. Some hops that are maybe from New Zealand that are like tropical and fruity and something a little fun to kick up the style a notch. What do you think about that?
Sounds good. Yeah. One of the things I was reading about today was because there's also Belgian triples, which are light and or light in color, but strong, and generally have almost identical recipes. And what's the difference between them? And I don't think there's a lot of difference between them taste wise. But one thing that somebody said is that the Strong Belgian Golden had a more fruity finish, whereas the triple, in their opinion, had a more like spicy finish. Mm-hmm. And they're both relatively dry, although some people that was online were saying they were dry but with some residual sweetness, and I'm like, That's if you understand what dry means. That would I don't know what you're saying.
It's light but dark.
Yeah.
It's
But
red,
anyway, it was
red but
some
green.
yeah. And also you know when you're brewing something that's a homage to a Belgian beer, they're not fixated on styles. You can do what you want,
Yeah,
do
oh
your own
sure.
thing.
That's
So
right.
some tropical fruit. You know, New Zealand red hops might be just a thing.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the yeast first. And I did some research. I searched around the web, and I got some confirmation from Casey at Imperial, because I didn't know if they published what the potential source of their yeast strains is.
Right.
Some yeast companies kind of dance around it.
Yeah.
But I asked Casey. I said, "Do y'all publish what the yeast strain is?" And she said, or the source is, and she said, as far as we know, Gnome is the Dashuf strain, or it's from Ashuf.
Right.
So I don't know how they sourced it, or because who knows, yeast changes over time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's from it's in the same family, let's say. So do you know anything about this particular strain, what the characteristics are?
Only what I read online was that it was highly attenuative and very flocculent.
Hmm.
So it's supposedly ferments hard, makes a dry beer, and then drops out, leaving a very uh, clear beer.
Some sources that I read said that it was fairly phenolic,
Mm-hmm.
and peppery and spicy as well, which that would be fun to kind of pair with those fruity hops.
Yeah.
I'm not wanting to go extreme in any direction, because I don't want this to be a novelty beer.
Right.
But I would like to have some interesting flavor combinations. I've got, Casey has sent me 2 packets of the yeast, and it was supposed to be here Friday, and UPS tracking has it in Kansas, and it's Monday, so I'll probably be making a starter.
I would.
I have been put on the blacklist as far as shipping companies. I did something to cheese somebody off somewhere, I think, because I've been having issues with shipping lately, and that's just the way it goes. You roll with it. You roll with the punches. So I may be making maybe dusting off the stir plate for this batch. I did get an email from Steve in Roswell, Georgia, from the North Georgia Malt Monkeys. Steve said in your latest podcast, you mentioned that Imperial Gnome will be available as a seasonal release. Gnome is supposedly from the Ashuf strain. I recently brewed a Belgian Dark Strong with the White Labs WLP 550 version based on the discussion in this article. And then he sent me a link to an article that appears on the Wayback machine from Christopher Owen of the Loggers Club in Louisville, Kentucky. Anyway, Steve says, I started with a Belgian Blonde and then used the yeast cake for the Dark Strong. That sounds familiar. The beer has only been in the bottle for a month and a half, but I sampled one to see if it was carbonating. It was indeed carbonated, and was very pleasantly surprised to find that the beer tastes great already. Best of all, the Ashuf strain produces a very drinkable high-alcohol beer, 10.1% ABV, what Stan Hieronymus describes as classic monastic digestibility. Steve says you should definitely give Gnome a try. And speaking of Stan Hieronymus, you and I have been reading from pages out of Brew Like a Monk, which is kind of like the, kind of the Bible of brewing these, Belgianish beers. So what does Stan say about the quote unquote style, this Belgian Strong Golden beer?
He mentions mostly that make it with Pilsner malt and sugar, and then he hits on the descriptions you should get, which are well attenuated, and that was basically it. The yeast spiciness and then he goes into to recipes or whatever. Or not or whatever, the actual recipes.
Yeah, there's a recipe from Vinnie Cilurzo, in fact.
Yeah.
Um, and it's fun in that the recipe is kind of like, yeah, you can do this or you can do that.
Yeah. Which is good and also very, very Belgian-y.
Yeah, exactly. It's like whatever you want. And I like that. I've forgotten. It's been a long time. I need to read this book again. It was a really good book. The way this book is structured, it has tables that have, like, for instance, golden style, Belgian strong, pale, or golden style guidelines, commercial examples, and then it lists, parameters from BJCP, the Brewers Association, Duvel, Malheur, 10, and Avery Salvation. So it gives you, some kind of like original gravity, ABV, the color, the bitterness, some sort of guidelines. And then it also has a table for characteristics for homebrewed examples. And it's like a range and a mean of homebrew examples from past competitions. So in 2005, when this book was written, this is, kind of a snapshot of what homebrewers were brewing in relation to this style at that time. So it's pretty interesting. Pilsner malt was used in all of the homebrew recipes, with the highest percentage being 90% or 92%, the low being 10. I guess they used pale in that instance. And then the average being 85%. Pale malt was the second used ingredient, with the high being 80% and the average being 0.5. Huh, interesting. So I guess that one guy or one gal.
Yeah, that one guy used 10% Pilsner and 80% pale malt. Yeah.
And then something else. And then some crystal. So wheat is also mentioned. Even in Vinnie Cilurzo's recipe, he
throws in some wheat.
Yeah, wheat 2.5% to 5%, and Munich malt 2.5% to 5%. I mean, he says both of those are optional. So what do you think about that? I mean, should we go for? Let's talk about the base malt. Should we just go for just plain old Pilsner, or should we mix in some other stuff as well?
Well, I mean, this straight Pilsner is like the classic, but we can change it some. Like, I was thinking of adding a little bit of Vienna, because like they list Munich here as a possibility, but Vienna is like a sort of in between Pilsner and Munich, and something like 5 to 10% Vienna would give it a little more maltiness, but not, wouldn't blow it out the door. And then, wheat is like, that's going to be interesting. That's going to give it just a little bit more of a bready character. And depending on how much you add, like in Vinnie Cilurzo's recipe, it's not much.
He said 2.5% to 5%.
Yeah. That's not much at all. I don't know, enough to slightly change it. I think adding either of those or both, you're not going to fundamentally, it's still going to be a strong Belgian Golden. It's not going to taste radically different. It's just going to be a slight difference. And also, I think the Vienna would do nice for the color. It would just bump it like a shade, barely a shade darker into, mid golden rather than sort of pale golden.
So, I mean, should we rely on the malt for the color, or should we? I mean, I guess there are a couple of ways you could do it. You could do the color with the malt and just add plain, like table sugar, or you could go with the lighter base or grain bill, and then say do like the D45 candy syrup to bring the color from that. I mean, which way? I mean, they're both,
I'd rather go with a Vienna than the colored syrup.
Okay. Well, table sugar is definitely cheaper.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
And more authentic for however much weight you put on that.
Yeah, you've been to some of these Belgian breweries.
Yeah, some of them.
So how fancy in your experience with what you saw? Did you see enough to get an indication of what kinds of sugars they were using in the breweries that you
I saw
visited?
lots and lots of 50-pound sacks of sucrose.
just,
I'm serious.
just cane
And
sugar.
they made no bones about it either. I asked a couple brewers, American homebrewers are hung up on Belgian candy sugar and all this stuff, and he's like, we use sucrose. Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't have a Russian, for some reason they did it with a Russian accent, but
Okay. All right. Well, let's save
yeah.
it.
I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't breweries that they may use alternate sugar sources, some of them, but sucrose is popular.
Okay. Well, let's go that way then. Do you want to open your? Do you have your spreadsheet open?
Let me open my spreadsheet. Where is it? Oh, there we go.
What original gravity should we be shooting for? Do you think, or what if I wanted like from 7 to 8%, leaning toward the 7?
Yeah, that's right in the. I mean, I think like Dubel's 8, and that's like the classic example. But I mean, there's always a spread.
And it's homebrew. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
This would be a Belgian Golden Light, Lite. Yeah, let's shoot more toward like 7, 7.5, something.
7.5, 7.5.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
if
I were drinking a beer at this point, I'd say 9, but I'm just drinking water.
And we're doing 5 gallons.
Yeah, or 19 liters.
5 American gallons.
For the Honey IPA 2, I just used 10 pounds of Pilsner, 4.5 kilograms of Pilsner malt, and 3 pounds of honey, and that got me to 1067 with a final gravity of 1006 for an ABV of 8%. So, maybe if we start with 10 pounds of Pilsner.
That's ballpark, yeah.
And add a little bit of, the wheat and the Vienna.
Yeah, let me.
And then start with like a pound of sugar.
If we use 8.5 pounds of Pilsner, 2 pounds of Vienna, 1 pound of wheat malt, and 1.25 pounds of cane sugar, that gets us to 1072 as an OG. And if we get down to 106 as a final gravity, which this is a highly attenuated yeast, and we've got sugar, and we don't have any crystal malt, so that should be doable. That gets us to 7.4% ABV.
Okay, so one more time. 8.5 pounds of Pilsner.
8.5 pounds of Pilsner, 2 pounds of Vienna, 1 pound of wheat malt, and 1.25 pounds of cane sugar or sucrose, table sugar.
So 8.5 of Pilsner malt, 2 of Vienna, 1 of wheat malt, and 1.25 of azúcar.
Right. That's basically 10% sugar. And then the remaining 90% is the 3 malts.
Okay. And what's your predicted original gravity? Just
1072. And that's assuming a 70% extract efficiency.
Okay.
Just kind of par for the course for homebrewers. And then no, wait, I made a mistake.
Uh-oh. What?
That gets us to 8.5 ABV. 7.4 is like a normal, if you did it with a normal ale strength. Do we want to go for 8.5, or do you want me to lower the?
Well, yours tends to be. Well, I may play with it in my. I think the way I've set up my little app tends to be a little bit more accurate on my system.
Sure. Yeah, this is all tweaked to my.
What if we just knocked it down to 8 pounds of Pilsner? Just for grins and giggles.
Just for fun. Okay, 8, 2, and 1 of Pilsner Vienna wheat, and then
yes,
1 1/4.
of azúcar. Cool. Now, what do we want for a base IBU?
You want enough, there's got to be enough bitterness to balance out uh, the sort of the sweetness, of which there's not a lot since it's dry, but um, to stand up to the beer and the alcohol, but not a ton. Like the Duvel, I think is like 30 IBUs. But you can taste a little bit of hops in there, but it's not like uh, it's not like an IPA or anything.
No.
And if we're gonna go heavier on the late hops, like a whirlpool stand or dry hops or both, maybe slightly higher, maybe like 35 IBU.
Okay.
That's like in the pale ale range, not in the like IPA.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah. I don't want a Belgian IPA.
Right.
So 35 IBUs. And
35 would be like you taste it and it would be nice and balanced.
Right. And I'm assuming traditional hops like Satz or Hallertauer, Mittelfrüh, or
Something like that. Or for the bittering hops, you could just pick a high alpha one,
mm,
and get a neutral high alpha one just for the bitterness. And then, use the late hopping to get the flavor.
right.
Especially when, Satz is frequently around 3, sometimes less, percent alpha acids.
I think the latest batch of Czech Satz that I've gotten is only like 2.5% alpha acid. So I'll shop around. I'll take a look and just get, because the bittering hops are not going to be that much of a presence, especially if we put a lot more hops at the end.
Right.
So I'm thinking. So that's our base beer. So I'm looking. I looked on Dave's website where Dave works now. Small Batch Boutique in Broken Arrow. I get Broken Arrow and Broken, but the one by Tulsa. I get Broken Arrow and Broken Bow mixed up. But there's lots of hops that have fruity characteristics like Calypso, which is apples, pears, stone fruit, limes, and citrus. From New Zealand, we have Motueka, fruity, lemony lime, tropical Racao, ripe fruit, lemon, grapefruit juice, tropical flowers. And Nectaron, citrus, pineapple, passion fruit, grapefruit, stone fruit. And then there's Mandarina Bavaria and Huel Melon and Idaho 7. Steve and I liked Idaho 7 quite a bit. And that's listed as berry, bubblegum, citrus, stone fruit, and tropical. So I'm thinking something along those lines rather than I don't want a bunch of like piney. I tried to stay away from the descriptors that said piney.
Right. Like American IPA hops.
Yeah. Because I think in my mind, I don't want an American feeling hoppy beer. I think that if the yeast is going to give us spicy phenolics, and peppery and stuff like that, seems like to me that piney might not go as well with that as something more soft fruity kind of a thing.
Right. Do you want to go like straight with the Zuni the New Zealand hops, or do you want to do like half Satz and half, make it a blend?
I was thinking of more of the new world kind of, or the new generation of hops at the end, just to kind of accentuate them more.
Right. Okay.
So just a blend of. Should we do a blend, or should we feature one single hop?
Oh, that's up to you. I mean, pick. You like that one? What was it? Idaho 7?
Yeah. We'll see if Dave's got it. Maybe a blend. Maybe Idaho 7 and maybe Nectaron. So we get
Sure.
from Idaho 7 berry, bubblegum, citrus, stone fruit, and tropical, and then
That sounds
Nectaron,
good.
the citrus, pineapple, passion fruit, grape. Boy, I'm getting hungry. Want a fruit salad. So I'm going to say Idaho 7 and Nectaron. We should probably do a hop stand and dry hopping too, don't you think?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
And here lately, like on the honey IPAs, I lowered the temperature of the wort post boil, and then I can to 180 Fahrenheit, which is what is that? 82°C. And then I can hold it there with with my system.
Mm-hmm.
And for these I did a 20-minute hop stand for the honey IPAs. That seemed to work. We got a lot of the Centennial flavor that way. And I used a bunch of hops. I think six ounces of Centennial at the dry hop or at the hop stand, and then 6 ounces in the dry hop, plus 3 more. I don't know that I want this beer to be such a hop bomb. I don't. I kind of want this to be less kind of in your face kind of a thing. What do you think?
Yeah, like a good, I think a good balance between the sort of Belgian-y characteristics of the yeast and the hops and the fruity especially the fruity aspects of the New Zealand versions and the what was the second one? There was the Idaho 7 and
Nectaron.
Sounds like a super villain.
Oh no, it's Nectaron.
I am Nectaron. Prepare to feel my sweetness. Like what? Yeah. I take those two, split them up into do a hop stand with both, and then do some dry hopping with both, and dial the amount, based on previous beers you've done to like where you think the balance is going to be, where it's nice and aromatic, and you get all that, but not just a huge blast of hop aroma that overshadows the yeast characteristics.
I hate to do half an ounce. I hate to open a bag and then only put half in, and then let the others sit around, having been in contact with oxygen.
Right.
So how do we do the whole? Do we do like?
I do half an ounce of each in the whirlpool and half an ounce in as the dry hop. And I don't think that shouldn't be overpowering.
But then I'm opening the bags though. If I, you see what I'm saying? What if I do?
Well, no. If you do half an ounce of each packet is like the Idaho 7. Open it up.
Right.
Half of it goes in the whirlpool. Half of it uses a dry hop.
Right. But then it's sitting around having been open for like 2 or 3 days or whatever. So what?
Yeah. I don't. That amount of time shouldn't. Just stick it in your freezer.
You think? Or what if we do an ounce of each in each stage?
Could do that too.
Let's do that.
Let's do that.
So an ounce of each. 1 + 1 at the hop stand, and 1 + 1 for dry hopping. I mean, it's not going to be like crazy. It's not going to be like a New England IPA level juicy
Right.
experience. But I don't want that. So other than like fermentation temperature, which I'm just going to be, the at the whim of the temperature in my spare bathroom. So I think it'll be. Well, it's 69 degrees right now as we speak here on November 18th, which is crazy.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Which is crazy.
Even if it got warmer, like you could put a shirt over it or something. Not a wet t-shirt that they use that to cool, but
right.
Put a shirt over it. Little insulation.
It'll be fine. It'll probably be this weekend when I brew. So is that? I think that may be it. I mean, any mashing. We didn't talk about mashing temperature. We're going to be using sugar here, so I might want to mash a little bit higher than normal. Maybe.
I'd say go for normal because you want it to be well attenuated.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to do like a step mash or mash it single infusion mash at the absolute lowest temperature, but I'd say 150 or 152 Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
That should do it.
And just standard table sugar and lower, 60-minute boil. Do my hopping so that the base bitterness is like 35 IBUs. After the boil, chill down to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Do a 20-minute hop stand with an ounce of each of my hops. Then should I pitch a little higher temperature with the gnome to start out with?
I don't think you need to do that. I mean, what I would do is pitch at your sort of a normal ale temperature, and then let it rise. If the temperature creeps up a little bit during the fermentation, just let it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those Belgian yeasts work well at higher temperatures and deliver the sort of, that's where a lot of their yeast characteristics come from, is from a slightly warm fermentation.
Mm-hmm. And then dry hop I usually wait till the fermentation starts to slow down, not complete, but starts to slow down as Scott Janish recommends.
Mm-hmm.
And then, dry hop for a couple, 3 days. And then I'm going to keg this one. So I'm not going to transfer it to a secondary.
Right.
So I'll let it clarify in the keg. Then I'll be happy. This will make me happy. What do you think? I think it's going to be delicious.
That sounds good. Yeah, this seems like it should work. It's basically the standard recipe with, we changed, we added a little Vienna and wheat, but not a ton, and, changed up one notch up in bitterness and, some New Zealand hops.
Yeah.
But it should be nice. The beer should smell like amazing.
Woohoo. All right. Well, be checking your front stoop before long, and you'll be receiving a box. With
Good.
This delicious beer.
Thank
you, Chris Colby.
Well, you're welcome, James Spencer.
Many thanks to Chris. I hope to brew this weekend. Last time I looked, the weather forecast looks beautiful. Don't forget to send in your disaster show stories. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody in the U.S. who celebrates. And outside the U.S., next Thursday, join in the fun. Eat way too much, sit on the couch and watch TV, and try not to argue with your family. If you have brewing questions... don't forget to... I said that. Don't forget to send in your disaster show stories. I just want to make sure you're listening. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. Please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.